You're listening to a Life in Quebec podcast. For more, visit lifeinquebec.com.
Earlier today, I met Canadian women's rugby star and Rio 2016 Olympic bronze medalist Karen Paquin. We met at the Restaurant de la Nouvelle France on Rue de Trésor in Quebec City. Joined now by Karen Paquin, Canadian women's rugby star and part of the team that won a bronze medal at the 2016 Olympics in Rio. Thanks for speaking to Life in Quebec.
Hello.
So we'll come on to the Rio experience in a bit, but first I'd like to know how you got into rugby. Where and when did you start and what drew you to it?
So I started when I was about 14 years old, when I was in high school, and it was just basically my volleyball coach who told me and one of my good friends that they were starting a rugby team and that maybe I should give it a try because he was thinking that I would like it.
Okay, so how long have you been playing now then? I'm not trying to age you, but you know, I'm just gauging experience and that sort of thing.
It's been now 15 years.
Okay, so what's the process then from starting out playing to going on to represent your country? Because you don't just wake up one day and say, right, I'm going to play for Canada. There must be some sort of process. Talk me through that.
There is a sort of pathway that people usually take. I chose not to take it. So my pathway was not very typical.
Okay.
However, I did play through my whole life since I was 14, obviously, on every team that I could play on. So I played in high school, I played in Cégep for St. Lawrence, I played in university at Laval for 5 years, and in between that I played for the Club de Rugby de Québec, I played for the province. Every time I could step on the field, I would. So I did that, and at the end of my university career, I thought everything was over, and I just kept playing because I loved it, and I love the game, and I kept playing with the club and the province, and then I got the call from the coach to join the national team, and that was about a year after university, and it was a big decision because I was working and I was exactly where I wanted to be, so it was a big decision. But again, there was not a chance that I would say no.
So did you have to give up your job to take on rugby in effect full time then?
I did. I had to go into my boss's office, and it was kind of funny because at that very moment he was offering me a permanent contract, and I was saying, well, I have to go. So yeah, but they all understood why I was doing it. It was no promise, and there was that possibility of going to the Olympics. So there was no way I was going to stay back.
Okay, so you are a current Canadian international rugby player. Tell me about the first time you put on the Team Canada jersey. What does that feel like? The first time you do it?
It's actually very funny because the first time I did it was in a tournament. So it was a tournament called NACRA, and it was in Ottawa. So it was the qualifier for the World Cup that was going to be at the end of the year, and it was my trial for what was going to happen afterwards. So I was not centralized yet, and I was just going to get out there and try to play and see what was going to happen. I was still working at the time. And so I did the camp before, and it was a week-long camp. I was totally scared of the coach because he was so tall and so scary, really. And I ended up playing on the very first game when I played. I played one half, and I scored 2 tries. And on the second try, as I score, I put the ball down, and my hand just like bumps right back up, and I punch myself in the eye. And I broke a blood vessel, and that was it. I couldn't play anymore. So I played 7 minutes in my first tournament, and I stayed for the rest of the weekend in the stands.
But they obviously saw enough in that 7 minutes to keep you on.
Apparently they did.
So you know, you put you were in Rio recently. We'll come on to that in a moment. But you're wearing the Canadian jersey. How does it feel now when you put the jersey on compared to when you first started? Does it feel the same? Do you still get goosebumps? Is it?
I think it gets even better with time.
Why?
Because you realize that, like, at first it's like it's an opportunity, it's a chance, it's a thrill, and then you realize that every time you step on the field, you're part of something, and you're part of something that's a lot bigger than just yourself. That's not what you feel at first. At first you're just ecstatic because you're doing it. Yeah. But in the end, you're feeling that people have worn it before you, and I'm coming to a point where I think that some people will wear it after me, and it gets so much bigger, and it gives you a lot of pride.
So you talked about playing rugby in Quebec. How big is women's rugby in Quebec compared to the rest of Canada? So?
I think rugby in Quebec is big, is strong, and is getting better. There's a lot of girls who have come through the programs of the different cities in Quebec and have joined. Like the very first time was, I would say, the World Cup team. When we went in 2014 with the 15s World Cup, we had, I think, 7 or 8 people who were coming from the province of Quebec and were wearing the Canadian jersey, and that was something that was never seen before. There had been some girls who had wore the jersey, and one of them, Jill Florence, is actually a legend. But there has been a little bit of a gap in between, and now it's getting stronger, and a lot of girls are getting into the sport, and the structure is getting better to provide those girls the opportunities to play at the bigger stage. And I think rugby is only going to get better.
So do you think the Quebec system, they've got it right in Quebec then, so far?
I think so far they are doing a lot of things right. I think are like in any system, there are things that could be improved or could be done more or better, but I think they are doing things right. They are supporting the athletes the best they can, which is a big part of it, because going to national competitions is very expensive, and there is a little bit of support, and the community itself is supporting the young ones and the elite athletes. So especially on the women's side, there's a very big push from that community, and people are taking pride in the young ones getting out to the big stage. So it's great to feel that.
Okay. Now, Rio Olympics was over less than a month ago, and Team Canada did quite well, women's rugby. Talk me through the selection process.
The selections were made about a month before we left for the camp, the pre-camp before Rio. So obviously we didn't go to Rio on the 3rd and played on the 6th. So we went a little bit before. Every tournament, it's the same process. So we are always training with about 24 girls in Victoria at the camp. And every time they are selecting 12 athletes to go to the tournament. So depending on who's available, who's injured, who's doing well, there has been over time a history of let's say 8 athletes that are going to pretty much every tournament. And then there's like 4 or 5 spots that are that have been rotated through the younger ones and people who are doing trials and stuff like that. And that's been through the years. And it was similar for Rio, except that the pressure was a lot bigger, and everybody wanted to be on that one tournament. And the other thing that was different is that they had 2 reserves that were going to come to Rio with us, but not be participating in the Olympics, or hopefully not be participating. And I say hopefully not because I don't want them to play, but if they play, it means that someone else got badly injured.
So they're there as an injury replacement.
Exactly.
Okay. Did some of the omissions from the squad affect you at all?
Obviously, knowing that 2 of my good friends, Magali and Elisa, who are from Quebec, Elisa got selected as a reserve, and Magali didn't get the selection. So they are my really good friends, and I shared a lot of our stories together. So that was the hard part for me. But aside from that, as the selections went, we just had to focus on what was going to be at stake for us.
So what was it actually like in Rio, training out there in the heat? Was it quite oppressive, the heat?
The first day was very, very hot. It was about like 35, I think, degrees or something like that. It was very, very hot. However, we had the chance to go to Toronto for a camp before going down to Rio, and I think that was crucial for us because in Toronto it's humid, it's hot, and we trained in that kind of environment, so we were prepared. But I think 35 degrees is hot wherever you are on the planet.
Yeah. So while you're in Rio then, did you get a chance to interact with opposing players or other Team Canada athletes while you were there? Did you enjoy the whole Olympic experience?
I loved the Olympic experience. It was so great to be part of Team Canada. That's not just a rugby team, because every time we go on tournaments, it's always just our little 12 players and 5 staff. So it was awesome to meet new people and to follow other sports, because we forget when we are in elite sport, we forget that there's other things that are existing around. We forget that we went to see, after our competition, we went to see boxing and BMX and volleyball and track, and it was great to share that and to be part of that and to have the opportunity to cheer on them. We didn't interact as much with other athletes, given the fact that our own team was about 320 athletes. So I think we were just trying to meet whoever was part of Canada, and so we did interact obviously with the rugby people that we came across, but other than that we kept it to Team Canada.
Now, you're playing at the top level. There's nowhere else to go. You're playing at the very top. How often do you have to train to be able to perform at that level, and what sort of training do you have to do?
So with the centralization, we train 6 days a week, often 5, but sometimes 6. The Sunday is kind of our day off. And we have 2 typical days. So one is the day that we do in the morning. We do speed training. So it's either sprint technique or sprint endurance or accelerations or stuff like that. So we do that for an hour, and then we have an hour and a half of skills. Usually it's divided into clinics of like 10-15 minutes of doing one thing, and then you move around and you work on catching, passing, tackling, rucking, everything that you have to do on the game. You just put it there, and then we have lunch, and we lift weights for about 2 hours or a little bit more sometimes. And then you have physio and massage and recovery and stuff like that. So
there's a structure to it then?
There is a lot of structure to it, yeah. So that's like, you do that 3 days a week, and then on the other days you do conditioning. So it's either playing games, so different games with different kind of rules that are involving rugby balls, or you're just running laps and running.
In order to be able to do that, then, how important is it to have the right sort of diet, and do you get advised on what you should and shouldn't eat?
We have the services of a nutritionist, and it's such a big part of being an athlete, because what you eat is what you are, literally. And what you eat is going to be what your cells are made of and everything. So it will affect your body composition, obviously, but it will affect your energy and your strength. And if you don't eat the right things, or if you don't eat the right things at the right time, you won't get as much as you can out of your training. So if you're going to the gym and you're not eating after, and you're eating 3 hours later, and you're eating just a chocolate bar, then what are you giving your body after your training? It's like you're cutting your training in half, and you're not getting the benefits out of it. So it is very important to eat properly. I'm not saying don't ever eat sugar. I'm saying eat properly so you can give your body the best chance to recover between your trainings and get the most out of it.
Okay. Now, what advice would you give somebody wanting to start playing rugby? So they've never played it before. They've perhaps seen it on TV for the first time, where you guys did really well, getting the bronze medal. And, kids now are hooked on this, and they're like, wow, how do I get into this? What advice would you give somebody that wants to start playing?
Just play. Find a club, get involved, pick up a rugby ball and play. At first, nobody knows how to play, and there is a lot of people out there who want to have a lot of kids to come into the game and enjoy it. Rugby is such an inclusive sport that everybody has the right to be on the field. Everybody has a position that's good for them and that's suited for their body type and their way of playing and of thinking, that it's such a great sport. And I can just say, go there, find a club and play. Okay,
now, so what's next for you and Team Canada then?
So for myself, I've been putting the 7-a-side game aside, if I can say that. And I'm going back to 15s, which is to me the heart of the game. And even though it's not an Olympic sport, I'm looking forward to participate in my second World Cup. There will be a World Cup in 2018 in Ireland. So that's what I'm looking for, and it involves going to Ireland next November for a tour, and we're going to play some matches against England and Ireland and New Zealand. And then there will be a few other camps in the next year, and hopefully I get selected to play in the World Cup.
Well, Karen Paquin, thank you for talking to Life in Quebec, and congratulations for you and Team Canada for coming home with the bronze medal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to a Life in Quebec podcast. For more news, editorials, and opinion, visit lifeinquebec.com.